Good afternoon, Richard Miller here, and this is Never Not Here. Welcome, please be welcome. And we're having an open mics, one of our open mic series. So please help me welcome Daniel Hirtz. So thanks for coming on.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for doing Never Not Here. Been there several times. Watched great conversations from you with several people. So wanted to chime in when you gave it an opportunity.
Yeah, actually the opportunity is always open, and thanks so much for coming on board. People write me also about my questioning, and they write me about, some people love the show and love the way I question, and some people are not so sure about it. And so maybe I thought I'd make a few clarifications. But cool. To me, one problem with so-called non-duality is that we're saying that the languaging part of humanity is not that much tied to this moment, or it's without a thought and an idea. Many things that we speak about and concentrate on or give our attention to are not really here anywhere. I mean, they're just so much in our thoughts and in our interpretations, and somehow we can look at things as if they embodied that interpretation. And so we're saying that basically the thought part is not real, and there's a way to just be in the presence, and then we just be in reality. And for me, what happens because of that is that nobody really tries to refine their words very much, and these details just get shrugged off. And I think the words are important, because I think that actually our what should I call it? Our hypnosis, or our conditioning is all language based. And so then if we just ignore all those words, the conditioning just goes merrily on its way. And so then I kind of think that the details can be important.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. I go with this. I say, in the moment we talk, and there's something we cannot talk about. And you can put a lot of different things into that. Let's start in the typical non-dual context. You would say the silence. How can you talk about silence? The moment you talk, you're not silent anymore. So, or in the philosophical sense, that there's always that we don't know that we don't even know. So all we do in talking is we're approaching reality, and so we want to get closer and closer to it, knowingly that we always will fail. And I think that's a humble position that I prefer. And being 53 now, I prefer people who talk in that kind of, coming from a kind of humble position like that. That doesn't mean that I'm not listening to the others. But I kind of get tired of this idea that some know and some don't. Just simply because our existence and the place we're living in, even from our interpretations, what you just said, even the interpreted space of our existence. So what we know as to be the universe, or our Earth, and this amazing place we're living in, even with words, you can be at total awe at it. It is so incredibly deep. And the more we look at it, the more sophisticated tools we develop with language to look into it scientifically, philosophically, politically, economically. The deeper we look into it, the more miraculous it gets. That's at least what I see and what I perceive in my world. So it's this huge space of wonderment and to some degree, for me, for sure, excitement about having the chance to even be here.
In one way, you said get closer and closer to reality, even though you know you're going to fail. But maybe you could turn it around and just say, okay, I'm going to get farther and farther away from conditioning, and I'm going to have some successes, because I'm going to leave a lot of my old thought patterns behind. And maybe that clear space is kind of a right place for just being okay with yourself, which is already a big step ahead.
Well, see, that isn't that sort of what I hear so much from everybody of this non-dual teaching world, that in the end, many of the questions come down to, am I okay with what is? If I can be fully okay and open my awareness completely, make it really, really big, include everything, my past, my future, my nowness, the thoughts that I have, the feelings I have in my body, the inconsistency that I see in the world, all of that, I can embrace it all, and I don't say any of that is excluded. Any of that is not allowed to be here. In the moment something magical happens, something relaxes, something becomes at peace. And for me, from my experience, my day-to-day experience, when I do that, I get touched with something. Something touches me, and I have a hard time wording that. I could call it God, I could call it silence, I could call it emptiness. I don't really care what you call it, but it's certainly there is a touch. And I notice, like even saying that with you here in this space, that I sense it here right between us. That there is this
when you say okay, okay with what is, well, that's kind of like a precondition, because many people are saying, well, if you could only just embrace everything, accept everything, and you can't really do that unless you're really and somehow come to terms and say, I'm okay with it. And maybe that takes a kind of a storying, because you could say, well, I always used to hate that, but I guess it's a step in the path or something like that. And then just leave it there, and somehow not care if it shows up because it's here, and then
it's here,
yeah. And then in a way, something you said miraculous kind of happens. This peace and rest comes, and I think that to me, I've been taking that as kind of like a mechanism that when we don't really have a belief that something's needed, that we're needy, that we're lacking, in other words, that's the same thing as saying we're okay with what is here. We might have a preference or something. When we're okay with what's here, well, then our obedient servant called thought structures kind of like fold up shop for a second, and just say, well, I guess I'm not needed. This guy's okay. And so then that's what, that seems to be a mechanism almost.
Yeah, and I would go this far to say, who says that we always have to be good? Who says that I cannot be okay with not being okay? I have a number of things in my life right now. I have body sensations that I'm not really happy with. I told you earlier today I woke up sick, and so yeah, my ideal state would be not to have any pains and aches and not to be a little sick, or my ideal would be that everything in the world is okay. But who says that it has to be that way? Who says that there's a particular goal for this existence, and once that's accomplished, then now we're all okay? Or the whole idea that enlightenment, in some moment I will attain that enlightenment that will, encompasses all states, through all sleep and dream states. I'm always aware, and now I'm finally there. Okay, but that's an imaginary standard. And once the seeker gets a hold of that imaginary standard, now we're seeking after that. It's to me, a loser's game. Because here's one thing that I really marvel at, so ever since I came upon it. And that is, when I looked sort of the backward step, how they say in Zen, I looked into the source. Where's my hunger coming from? Where's that seeking coming from? Where are my tendency coming from? And so I realized they were always there. I can't remember a time where they weren't there. I can't remember, and maybe that is a state where some people go, that you have a state where you see through all lives and all your lifetimes. Maybe I'm just not there. But my conclusion simply was, hey, what do I have to do with those things that come through me? What do I even have to do with my body? I didn't really pick all of this. And so therefore it's just there. It wants to come through me. It wants to happen. And so the best game I can play is to just go with it. You know, what's wrong with that? It just is there, including the miserable parts and the parts.
You know, there's nothing wrong with that, except that we just have to realize that that's an option, because you know, in all our schooling and in all our we've been coached to say that we should alter things and kind of change things for the better and apply ourselves and you know, we never thought that, oh, you could just be who you are and then somehow you would be in a natural. Well, I don't really necessarily want to say a natural growth, but I mean some kind of evolution or some kind of a change is happening. I mean, because let me ask you this, because you said these things were always there, but have they changed over the decades?
Well,
tendencies and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, things that were of great interest to me, I don't know, a few years ago, don't interest me anymore. But I didn't know how that happened. I didn't know how I lost interest in it. It just happened. So,
well, one thing you could say about interest, you know, like you're often interested in things that you don't quite have yet and that you think you could get. I'm not really interested in being the president of the United States because I don't really want it, or I mean, I don't think I could get it. Right. But I mean, and things that I already have, you know, I might be interested in holding it, but I mean, I'm not so much interested like I was when I was just almost there. And right. So as things kind of somehow manifest, then I think the tendency is to lose interest.
Yeah. And I noticed that it's in direct relationship to how much I've opened myself to actually what is. The self-reflected, sort of as a child, you know, I have a couple of kids, they're now adults, and I remember a situation with my son. He was like totally in his world. He thought this has to be this way now. And a friend of mine stormed into his room, a very, very passionate, good friend of ours, and sort of hit him here on the front head and said, you know what? There's a bigger world out there than your little world. And it hit him. It really arrived at his heart because it came with great intensity. And in one moment to another, this whole idea that certain thing had to be for him this way sort of poof went this way, because he opened up and saw that there's more, much, much more. And to me, oftentimes this spiritual seeking is just the same thing. It's like, I want, I need this, you know, how's that any different from anything else? I remember this, you know, I had it started in my childhood. I had several experiences where I cannot better describe it than where it sort of disappeared, where everything else sort of, I was still seeing everything, but that which I saw was just as much me than what I felt inside here. It just happened spontaneously. Then it happened a few times through drugs. And then, of course, I always wanted it back. I wanted that feeling, this amazing feeling of where I always could only find one word for it, and that's kind of oneness, you know, be one with everything, that this separation disappeared. So I wanted to repeat the experience. That's like a really cool thing you're going after, right? I mean, once you touch that, hey, now you want it all the time. And maybe there's this amazing state where it never goes away, right? Now you're finally fully enlightened and you never lose it anymore. And over time, and it was almost a painful process, I realized that I lost the desire for it, that I got tired of looking for it. It sort of dropped away from me, this whole desire to be in that state. And it was like a departing of a sweet thing, you know, it was so close to my heart. I need to be, you know, I have that search, and then I will teach it to others, and we're all going to be at one with each other. And then that disappeared.
Well, of course, when you talk about the part with drugs, it usually gets worse and worse, right? Because you got to take more and more drugs, and you have to take bigger and bigger hits, and and then there's bigger and bigger side effects, and then you can certainly get fed up with that. Now, you might also just get fed up with some natural experiences because they just don't come, and then you say, well, here, I've just kind of devoted 10 years of my life to recreating this thing, but it's not really happening, and so then maybe I should just get on with life, get married, have a family, or do something else, or...
Yeah, no, I mean, this was happening while I was married. My wife and I just celebrated yesterday 32 years of being together.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and see, to me, what I experienced over and over again in my journey toward oneness, to living oneness, that's sort of the direction, the question that I want to ask now that I'm here is, where am I going, right? I mean, that's sort of the question. Now that I'm present, let's just assume that, we have a baseline, we're here. Okay, so where are we taking this? Then the question that shows up for me is, how do I manifest that which I've seen over and over again in so many different forms, not just as an inner experience, but as observed it in others, observed it in relationships, lived it in relationships, to a great degree. So how do I make this manifest? How can I, I guess, a lot of people call that embodiment, or the bodhicitta, the way where you really share that enlightenment with all beings, that you go out there and become one, not just inside of yourself, but with everything that occurs in your world.
Maybe it's not such a big deal. Maybe you can simplify it and just say, well, maybe I'll just start accepting people as they are.
Exactly.
Because even when you're enlightened, you think, oh, my wife should be more enlightened. It's not really, doesn't ease off of anything, you actually get harder on it.
Well, so, I mean, that's awesome what you're saying, because now that I've accepted everything inside of me, right? We were talking just about that. I'm okay, right? I became okay, not just with what works for me, but also with the stuff that doesn't work. Become okay with when I don't do what I expect from myself, and when I do what I expect from myself. I mean, you can play that game further and further, but then the interesting thing becomes, can I do this for others?
Absolutely. How is that working out?
That to me is where it gets hot. That's where I feel like, man, now we're starting to talk. That's the conversation that is really exciting to me.
We were talking the other day, and
Yeah.
I was, sometimes many teachers talk about tendencies, like the whole world is waking up, right?
Right.
And so I was kind of having to say that, it seemed like people are more accepting. And I've been in I don't really have any kids, but I did get myself involved with a couple of schools or university this winter, and then I just saw that people were living in a beautiful diversity, and also just kind of functioning very well together. And instead of putting it on as a tendency and try to foresee that the world is improving or something, I said, well, what about if that the world is a reflection of me, and I'm just accepting people more and more, and so therefore I recognize it in others, and maybe that's how it could work, just by you see in others what you recognize and accept in yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how can we look really further beyond our own filters and perceptions? So, I mean, one of the ways to get that done is to try to find philosophical or some other framework that allows you to look with a little more broader spectrum, so that you're not like locked into one way of looking, and open it up a little bit more. Like, for example, I like Don Becks and Ken Wilber, Claire W. Grace, and what's his name, John Gebser, these philosophers and psychologists that found the spiral dynamics, the value systems, and humanity stage development, as Ken Wilber is calling it. Well, that's very cool. Now you can look at people and understand what they're dealing with in the stage developments there. I don't know, of course, I don't want to come from an arrogant point of view and look, oh yeah, I understand, and these people need this and these people need that. But it's a tool almost like a toolbox for empathy, for more empathic
In a way,
relationship.
but I mean, I was just suggesting turn that around and just say that, okay, it's really not them that's doing anything, it's me. I'm going through a stage. So then I recognize that people are more awake than I thought they were.
Yeah,
It's just a reflection of me, all those stages.
yeah, could be.
Yeah, and you don't have to really have a philosophical underpinning to say, well, it really is all oneness, so that it has to be a reflection of me. It's actually me, But I mean, that's just all very, very abstract.
It's very abstract, and I mean, is it helpful?
Yeah, is it helpful? That's pure. That's so well spoken. I don't think it's helpful. I actually think it's damaging. To build a lot of end games and try to see the whole pattern and see the whole. Okay, let me share this. It's almost the same subject. Maybe it's shifting gears a little bit, but I've just been reading a little bit about atomic physics and about the quantum. And then how they developed that, and over the First World War, kind of like from actually the turn of the century. Maybe I'm up to 1926 or something now. But anyhow, a thing that they got stuck in so badly all the time is every time they looked in there, they wanted to create a model of how an atom worked and how the electron shells worked and stuff like that, and what are these energy jumps that is a quantum, as electrons can jump. Why can they only jump in a certain place from one energy band to another, and why can't they go continuously, and how does that work? But as they were trying to develop this quantum mechanics and how it works, they were trying to explain it with Newtonian mechanics. And they were saying, and they couldn't let go of their old paradigm of how to visualize the world. And so then they were saying they had to get more degrees of freedom to explain certain things that they could observe, like spectral lines and splitting of spectral lines and stuff like that. And they couldn't mathematically duplicate those kind of predicted results or those observed results until they got more degrees of freedom. So there was up and down, left and right, and back and forth. That's three. They needed a fourth, so they called it spin. And so then spin is just a word that means there's 2 degrees of freedom, a right or a left, but it's not really a spin like a top, it's just a quantum. It's not Newtonian, and so then they were trying to visualize it and saying, well, spin is impossible because if electrons going at a speed of light, then if it was spinning, the outside of the electron would be going faster than the speed of light, and that's not possible. And so then they were mixing metaphors. In other words, they were stuck in their visualization, and finally some of the guys just said, look, we can't visualize this. There's no way that we can visualize it as we see a planet, a sun with planets going around it. It would be like an atom with electrons going around. It's not that way, It's a whole different paradigm. And that's what we're doing, I think, in most of the pointing, about non-duality. We're trying to visualize from our kind of mental manifestation and our picture of the world how this thing works. We're mixing these metaphors, and we're not really coming from. Somehow we have to drop all the tendency or the desire to visualize and just go to presence and forget what it looks like, or what is it, try to mock it up. And I wonder if that could be a metaphor for non-duality, or if that's just something in the physical realm.
Well, it brings me back to something we talked about earlier, that we're approaching what we're looking at. That we come closer and closer to seeing, to fully, clearly seeing, or something like that, or to this interplay of observation and manifestation. But I call it, we always will fail at it. You can call it any way you want. For me, this is a wonderful thing. It just simply means that we live in an infinitely deep universe that has an infinite amount of riddles and playgrounds for us. And we're using more and more sophisticated models, including a more and more sophisticated language, to not only see it, but then also from the seeing to create manifestations, to create actions, to create social behavior, to create, interaction between each other. And so a stage of consciousness, yes, of course, it's something that I have to develop. Otherwise, I cannot even use those glasses. But once I have the glasses to look at that this way, then maybe I can be helpful. Because ultimately, when I contacted you, is for me, there's a few themes that go through everything we talk about. That sort of we're still in that container. We can't get out of it. One of them is economy. The economy of our days. Economy means, of course, more than just exchanging money. Economy is how do we exchange anything and everything in the way we live with each other. And so that's a container. We even now, if I wouldn't pay for my internet access, we couldn't talk here, right? Or if I would have physically visit you, I got to drive over there or fly over there, and I got to pay for that. So economy has become sort of like a meta structure, a meta macro conversation in which almost everything that we talk about nowadays falls under. And it has not been that way. It certainly is not the truth for many indigenous cultures and maybe some other cultures that just don't relate to it that way. But certainly we here in the US and in Europe, where I'm from, everything is through and through connected with that, including teachers who teach non-duality and charge for it and sell their books. And why do they have to do that? Because, well, we call it, we got to make a living. And what does that all mean? What does that mean in relationship to non-dual awareness? I mean, in some way you could say, in the moment we're really fully non-dualistic, looking at the world at oneness, why do we struggle? Why do we compete? What are we doing? If we see non-dually and we feel non-dual, we have a heart of oneness, of wholeness, which is, of course, an amazing, just a wonderful thing that it happens on a larger scale and not just a handful of people, but it seems like more and more people have this sense of oneness. So if we have that, the natural next step is to say, not to inflict any pain on each other, not to compete against each other, not to try to, get ahead over somebody else, and then to say, oh, too bad, you just slipped off the economic scale. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. That doesn't make any sense in the world of oneness.
So, you said something about have a sense of oneness, but I guess that could be all over the map, from totally some kind of a real emerging into spaciousness or some kind of just sense of connectedness, where connected has to be two, right? So that they're connected, or somehow an inclusiveness, maybe just start from an inclusiveness that somehow you're my brother, that I include you.
Yeah, we can agree on one thing. If we look long enough into the nature of our being, we realize that at the core is something that's just present, and it's not manifested. It's not engaged in any kind of way. It's just there. And it spans through everything, the manifested and the unmanifested. That seemed to be, one of the ways you can say it. And it doesn't matter who I'm listening to, in one way or another, they're saying that. Okay, so, all right, so we're coming to that realization. Now, why would we have that realization? What's the purpose of it?
Well, even without a purpose, why would we have it? Let's just stop it there.
Yeah.
And ask that question. Why would we have it? It just happens, right? We didn't do it.
No, it has nothing to do with us individually or even collectively.
Or maybe somehow relaxation was the key. Somehow we relaxed or accepted, or just, let's say that we allowed our attention to open, whereas usually it's focused on earning the buck, or, keeping the grind going, or fixing the car, or, our next task. And then our awareness seems to be single file, and so, the precursor to allowing more could be that we don't have to do all those things. We don't, like we said, we're accepting whatever's happening, or somehow we're off of that treadmill just a little bit.
So oneness has only one way to manifest itself in this world, and that is through uniqueness. Everything is only once. it needs the other to experience its uniqueness. Because if that would be just you and me, our uniqueness wouldn't mean much, right? But if we have 7 billion others, actually our uniqueness is a lot more sophisticated. So the more humans there are, the more significant becomes our uniqueness. And that's sort of really turning everything upside down. Because in general, people feel like, oh, the more people there are, the least, you know, it doesn't matter that I exist, you know, oh, there's many people, you know, and I'm nobody. Well, it's the opposite in the world of oneness. In separation, when we use each other to define ourselves in the way of separation, then that's true. Then you don't want to have all these many others, because otherwise, you know, what does that mean? You know, you have a very limited bandwidth of defining yourself. You just always
right. In separation, in other words, the
right.
more there are, the more insignificant you are.
Right.
But in oneness, the more you are, the more there are, perhaps, the more important you are. I don't know. You are unique, like you said.
And the more exchange you have. In other words, every time you embrace another unique human being, and you really, and that's what I was getting at when I said, I declare my oneness with you personally. And the moment I do that, and the moment I deeply engage with you as a person, with the conversations, with your good and your bad, with the good, bad, and ugly, with all of it. And the moment I do that, something unlocks in me. Because now we're dancing together. Now I got not only Ingrid, my wife, which I've been dancing with for 32 years, I got my kids to dance with, I got my friends to dance with, and now I got Richard Miller to dance with. And I mean this a particular dance because I have no chance to dance with humanity. It's far too many people. I can't even meet even a small fraction of them. But you are that human body in your uniqueness in my life. And so one of the things that I believe we're missing all the time is the opportunity that every human being brings to us when we meet him. We have objectified human beings to such a degree that you know, we treat each other, okay, for as long as you're useful, I keep you. But when you fuck up, when you mess up, when you do something, you know, I get rid of you because, you know, you did something that gives me no reason to get rid of you. But in the world of oneness, that doesn't make any sense. You're not here randomly. You're here out of all these people out there. You're part of my life. You're part of my body. You're part of my existence. So if every time I say I get rid of you, I get rid of a part of me. And that brings me to economics. You know? Because if we leave, now Oxfam said that now it's really literally we have 1 billion people hungry, not just in food scarcity, but they're hungry. They have no food. 1 billion people. And these are our fellow brothers. This is my body. This is a cell of mine, hungry. Now, I'm not coming from, see, this is the great contribution of non-dualness in my life. I always had a tendency to be sort of a lefty and be very engaged with social questions. But non-duality has given me a place to come from that's not like I'm alarmed and, you know, we got to do something, otherwise the world is going to go to shit and so on. You know. Yeah, that's not the right place to come from because...
No, I love what you're saying. You're totally, you know, I'm on the same beam as you, you know. Maybe I'm less active than you, but I'm trying to get involved. But I think that somehow that anxiety-based call to action has got to go.
Yeah, it causes also, for the most part, enemy images, right? You know, you figure out who it is that you need to go against, and that doesn't work. I mean, that's another thing that separation has... you know, or that understanding our existence is so beautiful about, you know.
So that's where our great confusion is, you know. When we think of going for something, we think of it's equal to going against something, and that's totally opposite.
It's totally the opposite.
Yeah.
But going for something is for us still almost like a miracle or a mystery.
It's very rare. It's very rare, actually, you know. Because usually what we're going for is a concept, and what we're going away from or against is a reality. Like we're going away from this moment, you know, in my life in this moment, I'm a lump of coal and I hate it and I want to get out of here, or I got an uneasy feeling and I want to get away, you know. And so then we say, I even think going for enlightenment is really just so conceptual, because the story we tell of this freedom called enlightenment is what's giving us this yearning power, as far as I'm concerned. People want to make it, deify it and make it holy and say it's the yearning is something, a gift from God or something like that. But maybe it's a useful way to explain a stupid tool, but anyhow.
Oh, but here's another question for you, Richard. If it's all about oneness, and if that oneness is the core of our existence, which I'm present to various degrees, if that's so, that if one of us get present to that, then that must be in everybody of us.
Right. Where does it come from? We can't just invent it. It's got to be something real.
So why do you have to get there if you already gotten there? I asked Adyashanti that question. I said, if I embracing you, if I stop my separation with you completely, I accept you as a teacher, as a person, as what you are completely, right? So that oneness that you are is then in me. It's complete. There's nowhere to go anymore, but to each other. Because, you see, the fourness can only be for you. You know, I supposedly Ramana Maharishi said, there is no world, there's only Brahman. But then he said, Brahman is the world. So what he was saying is, see, a lot of these non-dual teachers get stuck at the absolute view and say, well, you know, the world is illusion, and, you know, the only real thing is the unmanifested, and so on and so forth. I mean, there's even this guy who wrote the book, The Haunted Universe, you know. I mean, he takes it all the way to the nth degree. There is even nobody here that's looking at anything. This is an empty universe. It has no purpose. It doesn't go anywhere. That's the truth. Well, yeah, that is true. That's the one side of the truth. The other side of the truth is our passion for life.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the truth, you know. I think it's just, you know what I think it is? It's like I was talking about science and quantum. It's like a Cartesian view of emptiness. When you have a Cartesian view of emptiness, it's just totally futile, you know. But get out of that Cartesian view and it's totally full.
Hey, I mean, we can argue it until the cows come home. Is it all one or is it not? And then the next question I have to simply ask, so why do you want to argue that? You know, in the end, you need to make a decision about that. And that is...
I don't think you do. Forget the oneness, you know. That's an overlay. Just forget all that stuff. You know, okay, you have experiences, you don't have experiences, you feel close, you feel far. I mean, that's what this moment is all about. And so many people, you know, instead of trying to have a grand scheme of things, which it always has to be overlaid, you know, laid on some experiential groundwork, just meet what's here. You know, that's the other side of it, is meeting the moment, just meeting it. Well,
and if you bring it into the moment, it's just the same story. Right? I mean, there's only this one moment.
Yeah.
It's always, it doesn't matter. You can't get away from it.
Who knows? Even if you're dead or commit suicide or anything, who knows if you ever get away from it? What other moment would you be in?
Exactly. When the intention gets really narrow, the narrower it gets, the more distance you create, the more separation you get, because you're not embracing the full picture anymore. And the moment you're embracing the full picture and you really open up your awareness, something relaxes, and we talked about that before, something touches you that just is there, you know, and we can talk about it forever, what it is. It is the divine over light that shines through all existence and all time. And yeah, okay, I'm settled with that, you know. And I say this with confidence because, you know, one of the things I've done for 30 years or plus is work with breath with people. Breath is a very interesting little phenomenon because, you know, in order for us to think and speak and do anything, we have to breathe. And that was the first thing we had to do when we came here. We had to learn to breathe, and everything else happens after that. So it's a very simple phenomenon. The moment you focus on your breath in a very natural way, there's no technique involved here. You sort of unfolding your consciousness, and you come very easily down to a sense of oneness and relaxation and so on. It works like a dream. It has worked in all cultures. I've done it for Indians, for Europeans, for Dutch people, for Americans. It works every time. It's always the same process. I have hardly changed it over the years. I developed it, you know, in the 80s or so. It's a very simple thing. And then when you look into Sufi work, or you look into, you know, all kinds of different other traditions, it's always the same thing. It's all very simple. You know, it has to do with music, which I also like. And so I don't want to go too deep into that. All I'm really saying is I believe that the non-dual state is very easy to get for people if they don't create all kinds of ideas about how difficult it is and how much they have to break or be broken, some negative patterns inside of them or anything like that. In reality, none of that has to do with it. In my experience, it has nothing to do with getting rid of anything. It has more to do with getting in touch, relaxing enough so that you're touched, that something can touch you where we're normally a little too busy for. The moment that happens, you get a sense of it, and your whole life gets that touch.
Wouldn't it be wise even to just get rid, and talk about not getting rid of anything, but one thing we could get rid of is the label, the non-dual state.
Right.
The non-dual state, and we could just
Right.
call it something like, you know, your life is really effective when you're just a little bit relaxed and not so, you know, because we've been taught many times to apply ourselves and to really push hard on some things
Right.
that we want the most. And let's just say that that's an old model, and we've done it a lot in a long time, and maybe we should try it
Right.
the other way for a while.
Well, and then there's the historical context. You know, I grew up in Europe. The Catholic Church is pretty much all over the place, and maybe other churches, but this is like by far the biggest organization. And what I learned about that church, what this church did over the last 2,000 years, plays very nicely into an agenda of people focusing on themselves, right? I mean, you should pray to God and live a great life, and maybe have a chance to sit beside God when you die. You know, do that, purify yourself, work on yourself, do da. That sounds to me like modern non-dual teachers, and that sounds to me like The Secret, where they want to create this great reality with their minds. It's all focusing this way. And why? Because the church did one thing: if we get together in the marketplaces and we organize, that game is not that easy.
Yeah. Well, here we are with another case of an old paradigm, and really trying to use that to discover a new model. And
Right.
all we're doing is just living in the old paradigm and putting a new label on it, you know, a new shingle up on our store, but it's still selling the same junk, you know.
I'm this whole idea of self-improvement is in so far flawed because what we are as each and every human being is such a miracle to begin with. Nothing that we can improve in this system can ever get to the beauty of what already is here. I mean, you can work all your life, you can be Mozart and all that, and great. Last night we saw something about this conductor Levine. I mean, this guy, unbelievable what he can do. But you know, his story is a story of a person who had such a natural feeling for music that he never did anything else. With 10 years, he was already so brilliant that everybody looked at him. And he has ears, and you can see and envy to some degree a life of somebody who's naturally just himself all his life. Because that's what just pours out of him every moment of his life, right? And so this inspires me for all the people who may not be that gifted, but are still unique human beings.
Yeah, well, forget the gift part and just concentrate on what you were saying is a magical phrase, like just naturally so much himself.
Right.
You know? And then that's it. And then all gifts flow from that, right? Because
All
striving
gifts.
to be someone else, you're denying all the gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And so then if you want to have a gift or two, forget about the gifts and just naturally be yourself.
Right. And so here's what I believe I see more and more and more, and that's something that I'm sort of testing more and more in my thinking and in my actions. I don't believe that to be naturally yourself is a self-reflective engagement. To be naturally yourself needs community. Now, I'm not saying this as a statement of, oh, that's how it is, but that's occurs to me more and more.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. I mean, one step in that is to make yourself visible, right?
Yeah. One step is to make yourself visible, and to bring this back, and to make others real. Like to say, you're real, and go beyond this impersonal BS. Everything is impersonal. Yeah, it is impersonal. Of course it is impersonal. Let's just forget about all of that and get engaged with each other and recognize who we have. Like, because it doesn't look to me like we have, like, oh, an endless supply of human beings that, and the ones that are not useful just die away, and then, we get some others to choose from. That's not really how it works. I see, one of the biggest epidemic in the US is loneliness. Older age loneliness, people not having others. Why? Because we have passed them on all our lives and said, oh, yeah, you're not the one, you're not the one, you're not the one.
Well, not only that, we've said, I'm not the one. And so then we haven't made ourselves visible, right? There's
Right.
both that. You're not good enough, and then the other side is, I'm not good enough, so I can't come out yet.
Right. And very much like your open forum here, I want to take advantage of it, because I think it's totally time to come out. And for me, coming out means I am here with my imperfections, with everything that I got, and I'm here to help your uniqueness, your unique gift that you are, to emerge, because every time I can help it, something in me turns on. And that's not a theoretical game. This is not a construct. This is totally real.
Yeah, but I mean, even let it be a game, let it be a game and let it be a theory, and just say, okay, the theory and the game is that oneness is only realized through uniqueness and individual uniqueness. Let it be.
And uniqueness can only really flourish and come into existence when it's in community, because it has to reflect itself in something else. What does the uniqueness mean if you have nobody?
Right. No, that's so perfect. Like, we talk all the time about the Sangha and about the reflection and about transmission and about some kind of a reflection or some kind of a tuning fork phenomena and stuff. But I mean, that's all happens in multiplicity. It doesn't happen in aloneness.
It happens in multiplicity, and I for one, I don't even believe in transmission.
No, I don't like that word, but we say it a lot. I don't like the word transmission, meaning something's going to go from left and cross the screen and go over to the right.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean,
well, only thing what happens is, if you're in the presence of somebody who doesn't have an agenda, doesn't have like a goal, something to go to, something to accomplish, something,
an expectation,
or just in the presence of that person, you flow more.
Yeah, you're just free.
And you interpret that flowing sensation as something that comes from the other person, but I don't think that's the case. I think, I've been in the presence of the Dalai Lama, a really sweet man, and what I felt like, he's open. I can be there. He's not having me place in some particular spot. He lets my unique presence that I am just happen. He welcomes it.
In other words, he doesn't pigeonhole you. In other words, he has no categories. In other words, he's not. He respects you totally. In other words, when he's facing you, you're the most important being on the planet, because that's what's here now.
Exactly. So then we start flowing, because our systems are flow systems, time-space generating systems for the purpose of experience. And they want to flow. They feel better the more flow happens.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really get that, you know, because like I was thinking the other day, just was coming to me like, why is this moment always changing? And I thought, well, if it wasn't always changing, we wouldn't even show up on the radar. We wouldn't even be here
Yeah.
because we wouldn't realize the flow. There would be no, the flow would be stopped, and the flow is what is consciousness is the flow probably. Without the flow, there's no consciousness. I mean, everything is just frozen in the river and moving together, and everything
Right.
everywhere you look, it looks the same, and
Yeah.
and so then there's nothing to see.
Nothing to see.
Yeah.
So when we don't, so in a dual game, we're always losing. Losing in the sense of what we try to overcome, we become. What we try to overcome defines us because we're putting all our attention there. And in a dual game, the one who is more brutal and more, is better at that game will win, right? So in other words, if you are coming from a peaceful, all-inclusive, holistic kind of view, and you fight the ones that are not coming from that, you will lose. And I believe we're always lost. Throughout history, the voice of connection, the voice of oneness has lost for good reason. To come finally to the point to say, okay, how do we play a not dual game? How do we play? And I'm not saying,
Well, wait a second. Let me say a few comments because, like you said,
Right.
people that play a dual game win. But what do they win? They win World War IV.
Yeah.
You know, that's all they win. And you're just saying the ones that don't play the dual game don't win. But I mean, I don't think anyone's playing because finally they just say, okay, I better be a dualist. I better fight the evil forces or something like that. Maybe nobody's playing.
Well, in the end,
Very few.
Yeah, very few are playing. That's right. So there is a game of engagement with each other that sets forth more flow. When you get shocked, when you are in a violent environment, I mean, flow is the opposite of what you experience. You contract, you get hard. That's what I'm saying. True, unique flourishing and thriving happens in community. Why? Because when that community is not pigeonholed or whatever
Each other,
and it actually says, "Wow, what are you? What miracle are you? Let me get that." Right?
yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Be whatever you be. That miracle. Be that miracle. No, not yet. Not yet. Hold on a sec. I can't go that fast. I'll be it tomorrow.
Yeah. Right. So when that happens, all systems start to flow more. In place of a dualistic, conflict-driven evolution, we can engage in an engaged evolution with each other, where we, in place of conflict, we put uniqueness. I know that's like a big jump, but people say to me all the time, I've got a peace project, and so people say, they say all kinds of things about peace that don't make any sense to me. One of them is peace starts within yourself. Yeah, okay, yeah, fine. What I have to say then is, will you let me know when you're there? And will you know when you're there? I don't understand that. Another thing to say is, well, there's never going to be peace because, there's peace and then there's war, and the two always will be. Then I have to ask them, well, but what do you want? You want that to be so? No, they say, no, I would like to have peace. Okay, simple. We're always in this conceptual, trying to understand things. Why can't we go with the heart and the needs and the feelings that are really present in our midst, right? And my theory is that loving each other in that degree, making oneness personal, is just really an adventure. It's very, very powerful. We just go, woohoo! Whoa, that's a little too much for me already.
You're right on. Say more about peace starts within us or not.
Well, peace to me, and for that matter, love, is better expressed in a relationship. I can observe that better when people have that with each other than when somebody has it inside of themselves. peace as an individual is in some way meaningless to me. Peace is a social term. Peace means that we are engaged with each other in such a way that is life supporting. It's helpful.
Well, peace can be a series of agreements and saying, I'll follow the law if you follow the law, and that's some kind of a peace. But I mean, I think the peace that that would reflect in all your actions and in all your relationships would be not an interpretation.
No.
It's not another story.
No.
And so then, in that sense, it is a place or a no place that does start within you. It's like a place that doesn't have a story, and it's everywhere actually. Huh?
You said you got to show up. So if it's within you and it's there, then all it needs to do is got to show up.
So Daniel, I really, really have to thank you because I mean we've talked about so many things, and it looks like that we're kind of building a structure. We actually have the potentiality to build a structure for the coming century, or somehow build a structure for now, let's call it.
What's important is that the spiritual insight in wholeness, this whole realization of interconnectedness, oneness, non-dualism, and all that, that there is a voice in there and a trajectory and a movement that I feel in me pushing, from the inside, that wants to see it manifested. And that doesn't mean that that's just that action. It's all on all levels. It's sort of a holistic activism, and form of activism that happens when I close my eyes and I meditate and I go inside, so-called inside, as well as going outside and do things in an economic marketplace that help more people to be financially free. It doesn't matter where it manifests and how it manifests. But I feel like it wants to manifest. It wants to get real. And, like I said before, I think the elephant in the room is economics.
Yeah.
And hunger connected to that. Hunger, how do we deal with money, with hunger, with poverty in the world? And our incredible privilege, that even the spiritual conversations that are happening in Europe, in North America, can only take place for many of these people while they're eating food that other people grow that don't live very well. So it's like we got to open up our eyes and really understand also our history, the implications of how we live, how big that really is, and to realize it's not a danger. It's not something, it's too overwhelming. I can't handle this. It's too much for me. You'll be surprised. That shadow that we carry in our communities, in our collective, when we're willing to look at it, it unleashes a lot of energy that we then can use for that transformation. So thank you, Richard, for this amazing conversation. We went all over the place, and for Never Not Here, I hope we have many more, and we actually find some way to do something together.
I'm sure we will, and I thank you. And I loved what you just said. That dream, that whole dream that comes out of non-duality, spirituality, knowing ourselves. That whole dream wants to be real. It wants to become real, and so let's let it. Let's facilitate it, and let's let it be real. Thank you very much.
Okay, Richard. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Yes.
Bye-bye.